I have a question here. Moshe knew how to remove both of them, the potential and the actuals. That's what he did later on, because he wanted to meet the Satan. So did Abraham Avinu. He knew the same power. He could do the same thing in Ishmael after the age of 13. So he knew too. He was quite aware of it.
Well, I'm coming to that. First, I want to. I'm going to have to discuss that part because it's not that simple. There's a reason why he waited for. I mean, like when he was 13, but he was also 13 years later after the birth of Yishmael, when he became a father, right? And then something happened, and he then had a brit milah. Why does the Torah, or why did the Creator put Abraham into this particular sequence of events? He was 86, as we stated before, when he became the father of Yishmael. 13 years later, he had his name changed and had a brit milah. The purpose of which, okay? Okay, now you're starting to put together a lot of information, all right? Right. Now, getting back to the aspect of 86, what is the significance of 86? We know that's a clue. Elokim is also 86. You know, we have the tetragrammaton force, which is Yud K Vav K, right? That's a pure energy force. And then, which never acts as a double agent. It's always in its intrinsic characteristic of a positive force. Elokim, which also is a name of God. Aleph Lamed K Yud Mem is a name of God. And that numerically adds up to 86. And at the same time, we also notice that, like in the Kriyat Shema, we have an expression, Elohim Acherim. It is the evil side of Elohim. Elohim Acherim. Now, you never give an evil side to the force of the tetragrammaton. The force of the tetragrammaton, using the power of the tetragrammaton, is only with the ability of drawing positive energy. But in Elokim, we call that a dual aspect, because it's in Malchut, whatever. Elokim is its numerical value is 86. Now, we asked, why do we have to know how old Abraham was? Remember? He was 86. And if he was 84, would it really affect anyone here? How old he was? Of what significance? But we're being provided with clues, as I've always stated, for the benefit of our own mental and physical well-being. No other reason. God does not act in his mysterious ways. With our ignorance, it appears like he acts in his mysterious ways. But because we're ignorant, it's, like the little story I always tell about Mushka, right? The little Jew on this, and I'll repeat it for some of you again. There was always a Mushka in Russia. The big lords had these big estates, millions and millions of acres, and they had all the peasants working for them. And they always had a little Mushka. That's what was really Moshe, who there was always a Jew on that estate. I don't know why they always managed that, but there was always a Jew. And so the Lord said, he's gone away. I'm going to make it brief. He's gone away for 3 weeks, and the peasants figured, well, this was an opportunity to really take advantage of Mushka, and they contrived a plan. They would intoxicate him and place him into the bed of the Lord, and so he would begin to feel he's the Lord, and so on and so forth. And they went through the whole procedure. He wakes up in the morning, and he's in the Lord's room, and he gets the feeling. And they keep playing this game with him, until one day he goes into the forbidden room. Since he's the Lord, he's permitted to go into that forbidden room, and that forbidden room was the library. He walks into the library and sees all these books, and opens up a book, and of course, not being an illiterate, he didn't know how to read. You didn't? All right? Because you're looking with Like as if you've never heard it before, but you think I'm going to say it
listening to the
differently,
story.
right? Anyway, he's looking all around. He can't read it. Now he knows he's not the Lord. He must be Mushkit, right? Because certainly the Lord knows how to read. Oh, not why would he have all these books here? But his ego says, but wait a second. I mean, you're going to give it all up now because you can't read a book? I mean, isn't that pretty stupid? And he finally came to the conclusion. You know what the conclusion was? It's a bluff. His law doesn't know how to read either. This is just to put on a show that everybody should think he knows how to read. But nobody knows how to read, right? So because we are ignorant, you see, then everybody is ignorant. And so whatever God does and all the chaos and holocaust and so on, it must be very mysterious. And in his mysterious ways, he knows why he's doing things the way he's doing it. We don't subscribe to that kind of reasoning, right? We want to know. And so we say all of these mysteries are being revealed in the age of Aquarius by Rabbi Shimon. He told us that in this age of Aquarius, the world will be full of knowledge. So, when it says he was 86, when he was 86, right? And that's when he gave birth to Yishmael. Now, on another occasion, we raised the question, if there was anything that we can say about the tribe of Yishmael, which includes most of the Muslims today, and Arabs, they have this characteristic and attribute of being very hospitable. Can't take it away from them. They are very hospitable. What's that? Take you into their home, and they're very hospitable, right? And in fact, they're very insulted when, if they offer you food and you refuse. I mean, they don't know what that means. And that was his attribute. But the Zohar says, but this was the attribute of Chesed of the Klippa. Now, how could there be sharing as a Klippa? So we already discussed that at great length, but briefly stated, we know how good parents demolish children, right? Give them the Mercedes as soon as they graduate, and and never really should they have a care in their life. Why should they have to go through all the pains of growing up and all of the poverty that they had to succumb to, so the parent now is going to make it much better for the children, right? And he demolishes him with it. In other words, by chesed, you can ruin people by overextending chesed. That is that characteristic that is also contained. So therefore the Zohar says, know that while Abraham represents chesed, there is also an offshoot, an extension of Abraham, which is chesed, but is called Ishmael. In other words, there's a bad side to that too. There's a bad side to that too. That bad side came because he was 86, meaning he had not as yet achieved the chesed consciousness that would come at age 99. The chesed consciousness was not Abraham, and therefore he was born when? Yishmael? At age 86. Because he was still not involved in that kind of chesed consciousness. Therefore, he had Yishmael, because that was the process that there should be, not only by the Arab, but it should be here in the United States, how we can destroy our children by being over-permissive and so on and so forth, for the sake of sharing, so to speak, for the sake of sharing. Therefore, when he achieved 13 years later, but at that point, he was born from Terah. He came from the seed of Terah, and whatever Terah was, we've already learned about that. There was a rebirth with his new name. We discussed that before too. With this rebirth now, at that point of a rebirth, there was a complete new Avraham, one of a pure chesed consciousness. And therefore, 13 years was when it was required. Well, you know why we have bar mitzvah. I don't want to dwell on that either, but you see how all of these things come together. It required 13 years because until the age of 13, he was not yet born with that facility, with that ability of a pure chesed consciousness, which we know bar mitzvah represents. Because every child is born first with the desire to receive for oneself alone, and it is only when he achieves bar mitzvah, age 13 by a male or 12 by a female, that this new consciousness called sharing, responsibility, restriction enters. And therefore, at that point, when he was overcome with this transformation, at that point he was ready for a new kind of equality, which was chesed, and therefore the brit was required, not before.
That's why Sarah, she got pregnant after 12 years.
No.
12 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Because a year later.
That's right, because she was. That's right, because she was only with her. It had only got. That's right. She was a year younger. All right. Okay. All right. No, we'll just pass that off. Okay. All right. Therefore, the what was indicated in this passage is to show us the significance of what Brit Milah meant and why it came when it came. Therefore, by a Jewish child, as opposed to an Arab child, the Arab has already a greater intrinsic characteristic, to his plus, of chesed.
But the age 13.
What's that?
By the age 13.
And therefore he could have the Brit at 13. But whereas we know the intrinsic characteristic of a Jew, how ugly that is from one point of view, and how it could be transformed into being something of a purified nature, but it's this kind of battle. Therefore, by a Jew, it was required that you've got to nip it in the bud. Or not?
Too late.
That's right. Okay?
He's going to ruin the
Now,
world at the age of 13. If we'll have to do it at the age of 13, forget it.
He would destroy the world. He would destroy the world. Not only could he not maintain balance and dominion over the Dark Lord, but he would be like Moshe. But Moshe had a thought in mind, and that was Moshe. But every Jew would be so noble as to be part and parcel and joining the forces with the Dark Lord.
What happened from a medical point of view? If you do make the Brit Milah at the age, first the doctor says now and the male says now, what could happen?
What should happen if the doctor says no and the Mohel says yes?
No, and both of them say
no.
Say
to
no.
To delay it. Yeah. It's got to be delayed.
No, I'm saying if actually somebody do go and
No. It's against halakha, number one, and the halakha is because of the understanding of reincarnation.